Welcome to the History AI podcast, where the past comes alive with facts, anecdotes, and a dash of humor. Here are your hosts, Chuck and Marco.
Welcome back, history buffs, to another episode of the History AI podcast. I'm Chuck.
And I'm Marco. We're your guides to the past, bringing you epic battles, forgotten moments, and the kind of historical tidbits that'll impress your friends at trivia night.
Or make them slowly edge away because you won't stop talking about ancient combat tactics.
Yeah, Chuck, that definitely sounds like something you'd do. Anyway, today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating and mysterious battles of the ancient world, the Battle of Tollense Valley.
Picture it, Northern Europe, the Bronze Age, over 3,000 years ago. A battle so massive that archaeologists are still piecing it together today.
And spoiler alert, they're finding skeletons, bronze weapons, and even some surprising dental work.
That's right, ancient warriors with surprisingly good teeth. So, grab your shields, listeners. It's time to unravel the mystery of the Tollense Valley battlefield.
So Chuck, let's start by setting the scene. When we talk about the Bronze Age, we're looking at around 1200 BCE for this battle. At this point, Europe was a very different place than the Mediterranean or the Near East.
Absolutely. In the Mediterranean, you had thriving civilizations like Egypt, the Mycenaeans in Greece, and the Hittites in Anatolia. They had written languages, sprawling cities, and powerful armies. But Northern Europe? It was a whole other world.
Right. Northern Europe at the time was dominated by smaller, tribal societies. These groups didn't have writing systems or large urban centers, but they were far from primitive. They had a robust culture centered on agriculture, metalwork, and long-distance trade.
And trade is key here. One of the most valuable resources in this era was bronze, made from copper and tin. Neither of those metals were abundant in Northern Europe, so trade networks stretched far and wide to bring those materials in.
Exactly. These trade routes weren't just for metals either. They carried luxury goods like amber, prized throughout the Bronze Age for its beauty and rarity. And guess where one of the richest sources of amber was?
The Baltic region, right near Tollense Valley. That makes the area not just a geographical crossroads, but an economic one too.
Add to that the Tollense River itself. It wasn't just some sleepy little stream, it was part of a natural trade corridor. Rivers were like the highways of the ancient world, making this spot a prime location for moving goods and people.
So, you've got all the ingredients for potential conflict, valuable resources, key trade routes, and rival tribes or groups competing for control. But what's wild is how massive this battle was.
Right. For centuries, scholars assumed Northern Europe at this time was relatively peaceful. Without big cities or centralized states, it didn't seem like the kind of place you'd see large-scale warfare.
But the Tollense Valley battlefield flipped that idea on its head. The sheer scale of this conflict suggests something much more organized, maybe even akin to the kind of warfare we'd associate with later, more advanced civilizations.
It's like the prelude to history as we know it. A time when these so-called barbarian tribes showed they could fight, strategize, and probably hold grudges just as well as their southern neighbors.
And the battlefield itself, the Tollense Valley, was perfect for a confrontation. Imagine this, a river cutting through the landscape, surrounded by marshy terrain and low hills. It's a natural bottleneck, the kind of place where an ambush or standoff could easily happen.
And that's what makes this site so intriguing. Not only do we have evidence of a massive battle, but we also have a setting that seems tailor-made for chaos.
Yeah, you can almost picture it, warriors trudging through the swamp, shouting orders, trying to keep their footing while the sound of clashing bronze echoes across the valley.
It's a Bronze Age Game of Thrones, but with way more mud and fewer dragons.
Hey, don't knock the mud. It's part of what preserved the battlefield so well for archaeologists. Over 3,000 years later, we're still piecing together what happened here, and trust me, it's a story worth telling. So Marco, let's dig into the discovery of this battlefield, pun absolutely intended. It all started back in 1996 when an amateur archaeologist spotted something unusual in the Tollense River.
Right, that was the now famous human arm bone with a flint arrowhead embedded in it. And let's just take a second to appreciate how crazy that is, a bone sticking out of the riverbank, with evidence of violence from over 3,000 years ago, just sitting there waiting to be found.
That single discovery sparked one of the most significant archaeological investigations in Europe. Over the years, teams have uncovered a staggering amount of material from the site. And when I say staggering, I mean it.
Yeah, we're talking about over 140 human skeletons so far, and that's likely just a fraction of the people involved in this battle. Many of these remains were found buried in layers of mud and sediment, which helped preserve them incredibly well.
And these aren't just random bones. Some of them tell a very vivid story of how these people died. For example, one skull had a massive dent from what was likely a wooden club. Another had a bronze spearhead lodged in a vertebra.
It's grim, but it paints a clear picture of how violent and personal this battle was. This wasn't a battle fought from a distance, it was hand-to-hand combat, face-to-face, with weapons designed to maim and kill.
Speaking of weapons, the arsenal they've uncovered is fascinating. They found bronze spearheads, arrowheads, and even remnants of wooden clubs. Now, wooden clubs might sound low-tech, but in the close-quarters chaos of a swampy battlefield, they were brutally effective.
And let's not forget the horses. They've also found horse bones, suggesting cavalry, or at least the use of horses to transport warriors or supplies, played a role in the battle.
Horses are a big deal. They're not just tools for war, they're also symbols of wealth and status. The presence of horses tells us this wasn't a ragtag group of untrained fighters. These were well-equipped warriors, possibly representing organized tribes or alliances.
They even found what might be the remnants of a wooden bridge or causeway near the river. This could mean the battle started as one side tried to cross the river while the other side ambushed them, or maybe the fight broke out as they both converged on this crucial crossing point.
And then there's the human remains themselves. DNA analysis has revealed something amazing. These fighters weren't all from the same place. Some came from as far away as modern Poland, while others were from local tribes in the region.
That's a game changer. It suggests this wasn't just a local skirmish, it was a clash involving people from hundreds of miles away. Were they mercenaries, allies, or enemies from rival trade networks?
Another fascinating clue comes from isotope analysis, which looks at the chemical composition of teeth and bones to figure out where someone grew up. The results confirmed that some of these warriors had spent their early years far from Tollense Valley.
And let's not forget the evidence of medical care. Some of the skeletons show signs of healed injuries, meaning these warriors had survived previous battles and lived long enough to recover. That suggests they had access to some kind of basic medical treatment, or at least the kind of community support that allowed them to heal.
And then there's the really interesting find, bronze pins and ornaments that were likely part of their clothing. These weren't just warriors, they were people with distinct cultural identities, reflected in the objects they carried and wore.
Exactly. This battlefield isn't just about violence, it's a snapshot of life in the Bronze Age. It shows us how people fought, what they valued, and even how they died.
What's mind-blowing is that all of this stayed hidden for over 3,000 years. It took the combination of good luck, a bone sticking out of the river, and cutting-edge science to start uncovering the truth.
And what's been uncovered so far is likely just the beginning. Archaeologists estimate that the battlefield could have involved up to 4,000 warriors, but they've only scratched the surface of the site.
It's like opening a time capsule from the Bronze Age, only this one's filled with weapons, bones, and the haunting echoes of an ancient conflict.
The discovery at Tollense Valley has rewritten what we thought we knew about Bronze Age Europe. It shows a level of organization, conflict, and cultural interaction that we never imagined for this time and place.
And we're only just beginning to understand it.
Now that we've talked about what's been uncovered, let's dive into the big question: what exactly happened at Tollense Valley? Why was such a massive battle fought here?
That's where things get murky, Marco. Without written records, we're left piecing together clues, and the theories range from trade disputes to outright invasions. Let's break down some of the leading ideas.
First up, the trade war theory. This is probably the most popular explanation. As we mentioned earlier, Tollense Valley was part of a crucial trade route, particularly for amber.
Amber was like the gold of the Bronze Age. It wasn't just pretty, it had religious and cultural significance. Amber from the Baltic region was traded as far as the Mediterranean, where it was used in jewelry, amulets, and rituals.
Controlling the Tollense River would have been a huge economic advantage. It's possible that one tribe or coalition tried to seize control of the area's trade routes, sparking a violent reaction from rival groups.
And we're not just talking about small groups of traders. These were societies with enough resources to equip armies. Bronze weapons weren't cheap, so this level of warfare suggests significant stakes, probably wealth, territory, or both.
The invasion theory is another strong contender. Some experts think the DNA evidence might point to a larger-scale conflict, where one group from outside the region invaded to expand their territory or gain access to resources.
That would explain the presence of fighters from distant regions like modern Poland or even further afield. It could have been a large tribal alliance moving westward, only to be met by an equally large defensive force.
Then there's the power vacuum theory. This one's a bit more speculative, but fascinating. What if this battle was the result of a breakdown in regional power structures?
You mean like a Bronze Age free-for-all?
Kind of. If a dominant group in the region lost its grip due to internal conflict, famine, or even disease, it might have left smaller tribes scrambling to assert control. The Tollense Valley could have been the flashpoint where those rivalries boiled over.
And let's not forget the terrain. Tollense Valley is a natural choke point. Any group moving through the region would have to navigate the narrow causeway and marshy ground, making it the perfect spot for an ambush.
That's another possibility. This wasn't a planned battle at all. One side might have been marching through the valley when they were attacked, turning what started as a skirmish into an all-out war.
Which brings us to one of the strangest mysteries, the sheer scale of the battle. The estimates suggest as many as 4,000 people might have been involved. For the Bronze Age, that's huge.
Yeah, to put it in perspective, most battles from this period, especially in Northern Europe, were small-scale, maybe a few dozen or at most a few hundred warriors. But Tollense? This was something entirely different.
And that raises another question: how were they organized? Some scholars think this might have been the work of a chieftain or even an early form of tribal king. Someone had to coordinate logistics, weapons, and supplies for such a large force.
And it wasn't just the fighters who needed resources. The horses, weapons, and even the food for the journey all point to a society capable of significant organization.
Another wrinkle in the story is the role of alliances. Some of the DNA evidence suggests that people from different regions fought side by side. Were they mercenaries? Members of a loose confederation? Or maybe coerced allies?
There's also the question of what happened to the losing side. Archaeologists have found few signs of burial or ritual treatment for the dead. Most of the bodies were simply left in the river or marshes, which suggests either a hasty retreat or total annihilation.
Total annihilation seems plausible, especially if one side was trying to send a message. Leaving the dead unburied could have been a deliberate act of psychological warfare.
But here's the thing, while we know these people fought brutally, we don't know for sure why. Every theory, from trade wars to invasions, has gaps.
And that's what makes Tollense Valley such a mystery. It's a story without a clear protagonist or antagonist, without a definitive cause. All we know for sure is that this battle mattered enough for people to risk their lives in one of the largest known conflicts of its time.
And we might never fully know what sparked it. Was it greed, survival, revenge, or maybe all of the above? Whatever the case, it's clear that the Tollense Valley battlefield is a testament to the complexity of Bronze Age societies.
It's a reminder that history is full of unanswered questions. Every artifact and bone we uncover adds a piece to the puzzle, but the full picture? That's still out there, waiting to be discovered.
Okay, Chuck, let's get to the heart of it. Why does the Battle of Tollense Valley matter so much? Why should our listeners care about this muddy patch of land in northern Germany?
Because Tollense Valley changes the way we think about the past. For a long time, historians assumed that Bronze Age Europe, especially Northern Europe, was relatively peaceful compared to the civilizations of the Mediterranean or the Near East.
Yeah, the narrative was that Northern Europe was mostly small, isolated tribes focused on farming and trade, with little large-scale conflict. But this battlefield flips that script entirely.
It shows that these so-called barbarians were anything but simple. The Tollense Valley evidence proves they were capable of large-scale organization, diplomacy, and war. This was a society advanced enough to coordinate armies of thousands, complete with weapons, horses, and supply lines.
And the battle itself sheds light on the broader connections of the time. The DNA evidence shows that fighters came from hundreds of miles away, suggesting alliances, trade networks, and possibly even early forms of migration.
It also serves as a humbling reminder of how much we still don't know about the ancient world. Tollense was completely off our radar until an amateur archaeologist happened to stumble upon a single bone in 1996.
And that's not the first time someone has just stumbled onto a piece of history. Remember when a farmer in England accidentally unearthed the Staffordshire hoard?
Oh, the Staffordshire hoard. For those who don't know, that was a massive treasure trove of Anglo-Saxon gold and silver found by a guy with a metal detector in 2009. It turned out to be one of the most significant finds from early medieval England.
Or how about Otzi the Iceman? 2 hikers in the Alps literally walked into a 5,300-year-old frozen mummy. That discovery transformed our understanding of Copper Age Europe.
And let's not forget the Terracotta Army in China. That was discovered in 1974 by farmers digging a well. Little did they know they were uncovering thousands of life-sized clay soldiers guarding the tomb of China's first emperor.
These stories highlight something really important: history is still out there, waiting to be discovered. Some of the most groundbreaking finds happened by chance.
Exactly. It's why we say history isn't just in textbooks or museums. It's buried under our feet, hidden in riverbanks, and sometimes even sitting in plain sight.
And that's not just true in Europe or Asia. Even here in the US, there are countless sites waiting to be uncovered. For example, a construction project in Florida unearthed a 7,000-year-old burial site in a peat bog, perfectly preserved.
It's crazy to think about, isn't it? Right now, as you're listening to this podcast, there could be an undiscovered battlefield, an ancient village, or a treasure trove lying just beneath the ground in your town, or maybe even your own backyard.
Tollense Valley reminds us that the past isn't some distant, untouchable thing. It's real, tangible, and still waiting to be explored. And every new discovery has the potential to rewrite what we thought we knew.
That's why history matters. It connects us to the people who came before us, their struggles, their triumphs, and even their mistakes.
And it's a call to action for all of us to stay curious. Who knows? Maybe you'll be the next person to stumble onto a discovery that changes how we understand the past.
So, whether you're hiking in the woods, digging in your garden, or just exploring your local museum, remember, history is all around us, and sometimes it's closer than you think.
And Tollense Valley is proof that even the most unassuming places can hold incredible stories waiting to be uncovered.
Well, that's it for today's dive into the Battle of Tollense Valley.
Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate, subscribe, and share the History AI podcast with your fellow history buffs.
A 5-star review really helps us grow and reach more listeners, so if you learned something today, or just enjoyed our banter, hit that review button.
And don't forget, we've got merch. Check out the link in the show notes for some awesome History AI podcast swag.
Plus, we love hearing from you. If there's a topic you want us to cover, hit us up on social media.
Until next time, I'm Marco.
And I'm Chuck. Stay curious, and keep exploring history. Looking for the perfect way to show appreciation for the incredible mom in your life? Discover Exhausted Moms, a coloring journey to relaxation and humor, the coloring book that speaks directly to the heart of motherhood. Gift her an escape into pages of laughter, empowerment, and moments of tranquility. With Exhausted Moms, she'll find a blend of whimsical illustrations and inspiring quotes that celebrate her daily triumphs and challenges. Crafted with love from images I created for the mother of my children, each page offers a space for creativity and relaxation, a reminder that she's doing an amazing job, even on the toughest days. Give the gift of laughter, peace, and recognition. Exhausted Moms isn't just a coloring book, it's a hug, a nod of understanding, and a token of appreciation for everything she does. Surprise her with Exhausted Moms today and watch her face light up with joy. Because every mom deserves a moment to herself, wrapped in the colors of love and support.